Let's face it, you are here for one reason and one reason alone. You want to know whether this bike, the Winspace SLC, can compete with some of the more prestigious European and Western brands. Today, you're going to find out. Guys, welcome back to The What Life. Let's roll. This is Winspace's brand new flagship model, the SLC 5. It comes from a range that was originally designed, as the name suggests, super light climber, but they've changed this bike completely. We're going to run through all the changes and everything they've done to make this an all-rounder rather than a super light climbing bike. I'll give you the full spec on the bike that I've built up, how it rides, and bear in mind I've raced this out, did some road racing out in Mallorca, took it out to Ibiza for some nice long rides. We have a very good idea of how this bike feels. Let's get stuck in. So before we get ahead of ourselves, there is one reason pretty much that you are here. You want to know if this bike's any good. I am going to tell you now, it's awesome. But there is one problem. Here is everything that has changed from the SLC 3 to the SLC 5. The SLC 5 comes with titanium bolts here and here. They also redesigned the seat tube so it's oval rather than round. And they did the same with the top tube, the down tube, and the seat tube. They redesigned the front end so that it's pointy and way more aero. They've completely redesigned the front fork and the way that it integrates underneath the down tube, which has improved the handling a lot. They changed the bottom bracket from a BB86 press fit to a BSA. They've sunk the top of the head tube so that it's nice and flush in line with the top tube, so you could really slam the stem. They use a way better system for the seat clamp that uses two bolts so that you can change the tilt just by screwing them. Rather than thinking of this as an upgrade to the SLC 3, you have to think of this as just a brand new bike. And I'm not talking about using aero bottle cages and putting some aero bottles on, taking it to a wind tunnel and just saying that it's faster. They've redesigned the whole thing. The original SLC 3 weighed, for a size medium unpainted, under 700 grams. The claimed frame weight for this frame, size medium, is 720 grams. Now, I run a size large, and mine's obviously fully painted, and this weighed in about 820 grams, size large, painted. So just in case you do care, the build that is in front of you here, which is basically a SRAM Force group set, we are running the Winspace Hyper bars, and we'll get to those because they are really nice and they definitely add to the premium feel of the whole package. SRAM Force group set, Pro logo saddle, Look Keo pedals. We've swapped out the SRAM Force crank for a set of PazQuest carbon cranks. We saved like 120 grams. This whole build, and these are deep wheels with probably way too much sealant inside them for tubeless. This whole build is 7.4 kg. So let's get into the nitty gritty of it. Is this bike worth what they are asking for it? And to be clear, frame, $2,800. The bars, which are sold separately, are, I think they're like $400 odd. And if you ask me, as I said, this bike is amazing, and here's why. The whole build quality does feel like Winspace have just continually leveled up. What do I mean by that? So I've had quite a few Winspace bikes, and hopefully my relationship with Winspace is like no secret. I've worked with them for 3.5 years now, and they've helped my own channel grow. But I've always tried to be really honest. And originally we had a few issues at the front end of the SLC 3 model, partly because when they first brought it out, they used components just supplied by third parties. I think they were using token bungs and token top caps. They've got to the point where they have found a supplier, and I imagine they're still third party supplied bungs, but they found suppliers that really meet the demand of what they need. So they found a really good bung that then is supplied with a custom top cap that says Winspace on it, and then also you have the titanium bolts for the top cap and for the bottle cages. So the little touches of the titanium bolts does make it feel a little bit more premium. But the nice thing is, and one thing that people often ask when it comes to a bike like a Winspace is, what was the inside of the frame like when it was delivered? So Winspace is a brand that I've always seen at the top end of carbon production, and one thing that someone has asked before is, what was the quality of the frame when it was delivered in terms of looking inside? And they have always been very high quality when it comes to frame production. And this particular model is their highest level of carbon that they use across their range. It's T1000, T1100, some form of M something carbon fiber, Kevlar infused carbon fiber. It's a really high quality carbon fiber which allows a few things, obviously to keep the weight down, but also to keep it incredibly stiff when you're riding it. And we will get onto like ride sensation and how I felt like it handled, especially when I was out racing it. But just for the quality of the build and the way that it came together, I was super impressed with it. And the nice thing is that having taken it on 2 flights abroad to 2 different places, built it up twice, it just works. Like, I don't need to change anything. There's no tinkering, which I have found sometimes with other models that I've had kind of 2 or so years ago. It's got to the point where I've built this bike up and it just works, and it works really well. So one of the things that I originally didn't really enjoy on the SLC3 was the front end and the way that I felt that it handled. Typically, the frames that come out of China have always been targeted towards slightly smaller people that probably weigh a little bit less. I'm not particularly heavy, on a bad day, 77, 78 kg, on a good day, 75, 76. And I found that the front end, given that the fork was thinner, just wasn't always going exactly where I pointed it. And these are small, minute things, but they've definitely solved this or sorted it out on the SLC5 because the fork has a little bit more width to it, and it also sits underneath the down tube a little bit, which I always feel like helps with the handling, gives you more bike or gives you more front end underneath the frame. So I'm going to point this out now, and it is something that they have with the SLC5, and I think it is also on their new T1600 model, which is you can't full lock the bars. If you full lock the bars, your down tube will make contact with the front of the frame, which doesn't have any impact when you are riding the bike. Like, if you are just out riding, you're going to be fine. Does not change a thing. If anything, the way that they've positioned this front end and made this down tube improves the handling, improves the look. But the problem is that, and it's something that the Cade boys talk about, which is that kind of livability. I put my bike in the car, I pack it away to fly with it, and it does mean that you get some contact between the down tube and the front fork. This was actually something that the Cannondale System 6s used to have, and I do believe it definitely caused them some issues. So let's chat about these bars, because in terms of creating the whole package, my God, do they feel good. These are the Winspace Hyper bars that were released earlier this year. These particular ones are a 95mm stem and 380 width. They come in 2 colors, black and then the color that I have here, which matches my frame nicely. They are so nice. They're very bladed on the front, so if you are holding them, they feel very bladed, much like the black ink bars that you get on a Factor. They also have little ridges across the top, which, although they might actually help with aero very minimally, I imagine, they just makes them look awesome. They come with a custom mount for your head unit. The only problem is, it's not a problem, it's like the mount itself is completely proprietary, so any problems with it, you are going to have to try and get another one from Winspace. But the mount that they provide is really nice, and they give you loads of different little adjusters, so it doesn't matter what head unit you run, you'll always be able to mount it on the front of your bike. But they just feel stiff, they feel firm, they feel like they are really high quality, but you do pay for that because they are, I think, around $400 odd. But from me, I'm not just saying that they're good, I'm saying they are one of the best sets of bars that I've used. Okay, but here's the thing, is this whole bike's been redesigned to move into that do-it-all kind of vibe. And when you do that and you charge the most amount of money that I think you can pay for a frame that's come out of a own factory out in China, like an own brand, this is $2,800, people are going to want to know whether it competes to some of the more high-level European Western brands. And there is a reason that the silhouette of this frame is starting to look a little bit more like maybe an SL8. But does it compete with one? And I'm gonna say that if you look at an SL8, which has a frame alone price of, I think it's like £4,500, so maybe $5,000 and a bit. So the frame itself is almost twice as expensive. I think if you factor that in, you are definitely getting in the ballpark of performance just a similar ride level, ride quality, the handling, the balance to it. And balance perhaps isn't something that we speak about enough, because the thing about an SL8 is that it has really thin chainstays and seat stays, which makes the balance of the bike a little bit different, changes the way that the height is just distributed or the weight's distributed, and that definitely changes the way that a bike rides. This has been so nice to ride, and it's something that I really enjoyed kind of hammering around when I was racing it out in Mallorca, because even though I don't have the biggest sprint on the planet, I'll be lucky if I hit 1100 watts on a good day, but it does still feel incredibly firm and fast whilst having that ability to feel like a lightweight, good handling bike. It doesn't just feel like a big old TT bike that has nice thick chain stays, which is why it feels good going in a straight line. I really enjoyed throwing this bike around whilst out racing. So one thing that I've personally noticed with this bike is that Winspace have gone through a lot of trouble to make it look amazing. One thing they've obviously done is swap it out to an oval seat post, but also just the way that the fork integrates with the down tube. Even though it does cause a bit of contact, we'll come on to that in a second, I think it does make it look very good. And the paint options that they have for the SLC 5 are insane, but you can see where they've got some of their inspiration from. But they're making a real effort to make this bike look awesome. And personally, I think they've done a really good job. And I am someone who's not a bike snob, but I do really enjoy riding this bike and turning up to a cafe and people having a look at it. I think they are getting over that hurdle of just kind of being considered an Eastern brand. I think they are, in my humble opinion, becoming that little bit more mainstream. Got to be a good thing. So I do also think there are a few things that we need to remember. And I've been working with Eastern brands for a while now. And here's what I always like to say is someone like Specialized, Villiers, Colinago, not only are they bike brands, but you have to remember that they're race teams, they're media production companies, they're marketing companies. They are more than just a bunch of people that make a bike and sell it. They have so many different departments that their whole machine needs to effectively generate money. And that definitely adds to, and obviously the R&D that goes into everything that they create. Like, it definitely adds to the push through of kind of how they price up their frames. I think with the Eastern brands like Winspace, I chat to them all the time. I know that if I drop them an email, you know, they have a big office, but they're all in there working and they'll chat to each other and I can speak to anyone. So I think at the moment they are at a point where they are growing and producing very good frames, but they don't have some of the overheads that I think some of the other kind of larger, more established brands do have. So my point is pretty simple, is that I still think you are getting a ton of value from a frame like this, even though this is now their most expensive frame that they produce. Even when you look at it against some of the Western brands, I think you are still getting a frame of equal value, but you aren't quite paying as much. And yes, it's not cheap. I reckon this whole bike is maybe £6,500, but I reckon it is comparable to a bike that's £10,000–12,000, especially if you were to put a top-end group set on it. So here's the things that I like about this the most. I actually think it looks really good. They've done a real good job of designing this frame. The thing that does cause a little bit of issue is just the way that the fork can, if you let the bar swing round, touch the down tube. The other thing I love about it is the way that it rides, the way that it feels. It does ride like a really high-end, competitive, all-round bike. This is probably my favorite bike at the moment that I have, that I want to go out and ride. It doesn't just perform as a good bike from China, it performs as a good bike, which I think is a very important distinction. So let's wrap this all up. The build quality on this has been excellent. They are using a far better saddle clamp system on this one. The bolt itself that holds the seat post up has been great. The front end of this bike has been completely changed and is so dialed in. One of the things I enjoyed most was doing some of the big descents when we were out in Mallorca. Going down Femenia was just way more enjoyable, felt really dialed, felt really well balanced, and it still feels like a lightweight, fast bike that you could put down efforts, certainly in a sprint. Not that I'm ever competitive in one myself, but it does feel like you could. The limiting factor for me in this entire scenario is actually me. Like, I don't have the power to perform on a bike like this, but as build quality, exceptional. So if you do have one of these, an SLC 5, or you're thinking about getting one, let me know. I'd love to know your thoughts. The way that I've seen Winspace progress, I can't help but feel that they are only going to grow, especially if they keep creating frames like this. I know it's more expensive than certainly anything else they have in their range, but I do feel like they are not just asking for more money and trying to give you the same product. They have really gone out their way to improve everything on this, and it's moved into what the cycling world is looking for, which is an aerodynamic do-it-all bike that, for me, who does not really care about weight, comes in at 7.4 kg with deep wheels and a ton of sealant in the tires. Guys, thanks for joining in. Let me know what your thoughts are on it. Like, how do you think it looks? Again, one thing I 100% recommend is those bars. They are great. If you are just looking to upgrade something on your bike, the bars are awesome. Let me know what you think. Guys, thanks for joining in. I'll see you on another one soon.